Hello, everyone. If you enjoy my channel, please support me with one like, one subscribe, and one share.
The shower whisper. Imagine standing under a hot shower, the water drumming on your shoulders, steam curling up around your face, and suddenly a question floats into your brain like a lost balloon. Not a practical question like, did I lock the front door? Something deeper. Something almost embarrassing. Here it is. If you could write a letter to yourself on the very first day you started learning English back when you were terrified, clueless, and convinced everyone was secretly laughing at you, what would you whisper to that scared, shaking version of you? Would you tell them to give up? Would you lie and say it gets easier? Or would you say something so honest and so strange that it rewires their entire brain? I asked myself that question last week. I was standing exactly where I am right now in my kitchen, not in a shower, but same level of vulnerability. My hands were covered in flour because I was trying to bake bread, which I am terrible at. And out of nowhere, my own voice inside my head said, "You're 42 years old. You've lived in the United States for 15 years. And you still panic when someone says, 'What's up?' instead of 'How are you?'" That voice wasn't mean. It was tired of hiding. Tired of pretending that my English was fine, when inside I knew every single conversation was a minefield of possible mistakes. So I stopped kneading the dough, I washed my hands, and I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where my kids do their homework, where my husband leaves his coffee mug, where I have cried more times than I can count. And I wrote a letter to my younger self. The one who got off a plane at JFK Airport with one suitcase, a dictionary that was already outdated, and a heart so full of hope it was almost stupid. That letter changed me, not because it was brilliant, because it was honest. And today, I want to share it with you, not the whole letter yet. We'll get there, but the idea behind it. Because if you're watching this video, I know something about you. I know that you have felt that cold wash of shame when you said a word wrong and someone looked at you like you had 3 heads. I know that you have rehearsed a sentence in your head for 20 seconds, opened your mouth, and then forgotten every single word. I know that you have nodded and smiled when you didn't understand a thing, just to avoid the embarrassment of saying, "Can you repeat that?" for the 4th time. I know because I was you. I am you. And that's why this story matters. Here's the thing no textbook tells you. Learning English is not a language problem. It's a fear problem. Your brain knows the words. Your brain knows the grammar, but your fear, that ancient, lizard brain, fight or flight terror of being judged, that fear is what freezes your mouth. That fear is what makes you sound like a beginner even when you've been studying for years. And until you whisper the right thing to that scared version of yourself, nothing will change. Not more flashcards, not more apps. Not more hours of listening to podcasts while you sleep. You can't learn your way out of fear. You have to talk your way out. And the conversation starts with a letter. So let me take you back to the beginning of my American story. I was 27 years old, fresh off a plane from a country where I was a respected professional, a good public speaker, a woman who knew exactly what to say and how to say it. In my language, I was powerful. In English, I was a toddler. I remember my first week. I went to a grocery store to buy milk. Just milk. The cashier asked me a question. I didn't understand. She repeated it slower. Still nothing. She pointed at my credit card and said debit or credit. Those 3 words, 3 simple words, and I stood there like a deer in headlights, my face burning, the line growing behind me, everyone staring. I pointed at the card. She sighed. She swiped it, and I ran out of that store like I had committed a crime. That night, I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, no furniture yet, just a sleeping bag and a suitcase. And I promised myself something terrible. I promised myself I would never speak English unless I absolutely had to. I would nod. I would smile. I would point. But I would not risk being humiliated again. And I kept that promise for years. That's the part that breaks my heart now. I robbed myself of so many conversations, so many connections, so many moments of laughter and friendship, because I was too scared to sound stupid. And the saddest part, the people I was afraid of, the cashiers, the coworkers, the neighbors, they didn't care. They weren't waiting to laugh at me. They were just living their lives. My fear was the only thing standing in my way. Not my English, my fear. So here's the question I want you to sit with for a moment. What are you whispering to yourself right now? Not out loud. In that quiet space behind your eyes. Are you whispering, I'm not good enough? Are you whispering, everyone is judging me? Are you whispering, I'll speak when I'm perfect? Because that whisper, that silent, constant, cruel whisper, is the real reason you're stuck. Not your vocabulary, not your accent, that whisper. And the only way to change it is to write a new one. A letter from your future self to your current self. A whisper that says, you are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to sound like a beginner, because that's how every single person starts. Even native speakers. Even me. I didn't know that 15 years ago. I thought everyone else was born fluent. I thought I was the only one who stumbled over simple sentences. But now I know the truth. Fear is the universal language, and courage is the translation. In the next part of this story, I'm going to show you exactly what I wrote in that letter to my younger self. The words that made me cry. The words that finally set me free. And the words that I hope will do the same for you. But first, I need you to do something. I need you to take a deep breath, and I need you to whisper out loud, right now, wherever you are, one word. Just one, say hello. Say it in your English, with your accent, with your fear. Say it anyway, because that whisper is the first sentence of your letter. And your letter is not yet written. My younger self, the girl with one suitcase and a heart full of hope. Let me paint you a picture. It's a gray Tuesday morning in November, 15 years ago. A young woman, let's call her younger me, steps off a crowded airplane at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. She's wearing a coat that's too thin for the American winter because she bought it in her home country, where winters are gentle and polite. Her hair is a mess. Her eyes are red from crying during the landing because she's terrified of flying and also terrified of everything else. She's holding a one-way ticket that she can't afford, and a green card that feels like it belongs to someone else. In her hand is a single suitcase. Inside that suitcase, clothes, a few family photos, a dictionary with a broken spine. and a notebook where she has written down useful English phrases like, "Where is the bathroom?" and "How much does this cost?" And I am sorry, I do not understand. She has practiced these phrases for months. She can say them perfectly. But the moment she walks into the immigration line at JFK, a tired-looking officer looks at her passport, then at her face, and asks, "Purpose of your stay?" She freezes. Her mind goes blank. She knows the words purpose, stay, your, but her mouth refuses to cooperate. She stands there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. The officer frowns, "Ma'am," he says. And finally, in a voice so small it barely exists, she squeaks, I live here now." The officer stares at her for a long 3 seconds. Then he stamps her passport and waves her through. She doesn't know if that was the right answer. She doesn't care. She just survived. That woman was me, and that moment, that tiny, forgettable interaction at an airport counter, set the tone for the next decade of my life. Because from that day forward, I treated every single conversation like it was an interrogation. Every question felt like a test I hadn't studied for. Every response felt like a potential failure. I didn't just struggle with English. I struggled with the belief that I deserved to speak it at all. Here's what I didn't understand back then. Your brain is not a computer that simply stores words and grammar rules. Your brain is a storyteller, and the story tells itself about your abilities. That story becomes your reality. I had told myself a story that went like this: you are an immigrant. Your English is bad. People will judge you. You will embarrass yourself. The best thing you can do is stay quiet and not draw attention. That story played on a loop in my head for years. Every time I opened my mouth, that story got louder. And because the story was so loud, I kept making mistakes, which confirmed the story, which made me more scared, which made me make more mistakes. It was a perfect, vicious, self-destroying cycle, and I had no idea how to break it. My younger self, let's give her a name, let's call her Anna. Anna lived in a small apartment in Queens with 3 roommates she found on Craigslist. They were nice people, mostly other immigrants, all of them struggling with the same invisible weight. Anna worked as a cashier at a small grocery store. Not because she was uneducated. She had a degree in business from a good university back home, but because her English wasn't good enough for anything else. Every day, she stood behind the register, scanning items, saying thank you, come again, and praying no one asked her anything more complicated. One day, a customer asked her, "Do you have any avocados left?" Anna heard avocados and thought the customer was saying a vacuum is left. She pointed to the cleaning supplies aisle. The customer looked confused. Anna felt her face turn red. She wanted to disappear. That night, she cried into her pillow so her roommates wouldn't hear, and she whispered to herself, "Maybe I should just go home. Maybe I'm not cut out for this country." Have you ever whispered something like that to yourself? That tiny, defeated whisper that says you're not enough. That's the whisper I want to talk about in this story. Because that whisper is the real enemy. Not your accent, not your grammar, not the fact that you said avocados wrong. That whisper. And here's the thing about whispers. They start small. But if you listen to them long enough, they become your entire inner voice. They become the filter through which you see every interaction, every opportunity, every possible connection. Anna spent 5 years listening to that whisper, 5 years of nodding and smiling, 5 years of saying I'm fine when she was not fine, 5 years of watching other people with less education, less intelligence, less heart, move ahead because they spoke English without fear. She didn't hate them, she hated herself. And then one day, something shifted, not because of a dramatic event, because of a mistake. A beautiful, accidental, life-saving mistake. She was at work, and a customer asked her, "Where can I find the canned beans?" Anna meant to say, "All 3, but her mouth said, "Smile 3. The customer laughed, not a mean laugh, a warm, confused laugh, and said, "That's the best smile I've had all day." And Anna laughed too. For the first time in years, she laughed at her own mistake instead of crying about it. That small moment, that one customer who didn't judge her, cracked open the door. And through that crack, a tiny bit of light entered. She started to wonder, what if the whisper was wrong? What if people weren't waiting to laugh at her? What if they were just living their lives, same as her? That question changed everything. But it took her many more years to fully answer it. And the answer came in the form of a letter. A letter she wrote to herself on a random Tuesday night, sitting at a kitchen table just like the one I'm sitting at now. That letter is the heart of this video, and in the next section, I'm going to read it to you. But before I do, I want you to think about your own younger self, the version of you that first started learning English, the version that was excited and scared and hopeful and convinced that someday you would sound like a native speaker. What would you whisper to that person right now? Would you be kind? Would you be honest? Or would you say the same cruel things that your fear has been saying all along? Take a breath. We're about to go deeper. The first humiliation, the day I swore I would never speak again. You want to know the exact moment my fear of English became a monster? I'll tell you. It was a Tuesday, not a special Tuesday, not a birthday or an anniversary, just a regular, forgettable Tuesday 3 months after I arrived in America. I had finally worked up the courage to take an English class at the local community center. Not a fancy school, just a small room with plastic chairs, a whiteboard that smelled like old markers, and a teacher named Mrs. Kowalski, who had been teaching immigrants for 30 years and had exactly 0 patience left. There were 12 students in that class, from 12 different countries, all of us scared, all of us pretending we weren't. Mrs. Kowalski had a habit of calling on people randomly. She believed in immersion, which is a fancy way of saying she enjoyed watching people squirm. That Tuesday, she was teaching pronunciation. Specifically, the difference between the short I sound and the long E sound. She wrote 2 words on the board, beach and bitch. Then she said, "Class, these words sound very different. If you say the wrong one, you might embarrass yourself. Let's practice." My heart stopped. I knew the difference. In my head, I could hear both sounds perfectly, but my mouth, my stupid, traitorous mouth, had a mind of its own. Mrs. Kowalski pointed at me. "You," she said. "Read the first sentence." The sentence was, "I want to go to the beach." I opened my mouth. I took a breath, and I said, "I want to go to the bitch." The room went silent. For one beautiful, horrible second, no one made a sound. Then a man in the back, a loud man from a country I won't name because I don't want to blame anyone, started laughing. Not a polite chuckle. A full, belly-shaking, point-at-you laugh. And then other people joined in. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to make my face burn like I had stuck it in an oven. Mrs. Kowalski didn't laugh. She just sighed and said, "Try again. Focus on the sound." I tried again. "I want to go to the beach." I said it correctly that time. Perfectly, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. For the rest of that class, I didn't speak. For the rest of that week, I didn't speak. For the rest of that month, I barely made eye contact with anyone. I had learned a terrible lesson that day. Not about pronunciation, about safety. My brain had concluded, speaking English is dangerous. Speaking English leads to humiliation. Speaking English will make people laugh at you. So stop speaking. And I did. For years I did. That's the thing about humiliation. It's not just embarrassing in the moment. It rewires your brain. Neuroscientists have studied this. When you experience a strong social rejection or public embarrassment, the same areas of your brain light up as when you experience physical pain. Literally, your brain cannot tell the difference between someone laughing at your accent and someone punching you in the stomach. So it creates a protective response, avoidance. You stop doing the thing that caused the pain, even if that thing is essential to your survival. Even if that thing is speaking. I spent the next 5 years avoiding conversations. I would go to the grocery store at 10 p.m. when no one else was there so I wouldn't have to talk to cashiers. I would order food by pointing at the menu instead of saying the names of the dishes. I would nod and smile when I didn't understand, even when nodding and smiling was completely inappropriate. One time, a neighbor told me her mother had died, and I nodded and smiled because I didn't catch the word died. She looked at me like I was a monster. I was not a monster. I was just terrified. And here's the cruelest part of the whole thing. My English wasn't even that bad. I could read well. I could write decently. I understood almost everything when people spoke slowly. But that one moment, that one stupid, 5-second mistake in a community center classroom, had convinced me that my voice was dangerous. So I locked it away. I became the quiet immigrant. The one who never spoke unless spoken to. The one who people described as shy or mysterious when really, I was just paralyzed. Looking back, I want to grab that younger woman by the shoulders and shake her. I want to say, "Anna, that man who laughed at you, he was an idiot." Mrs. Kowalski, she was tired and burned out. None of those people went home thinking about your mistake. They forgot about it before they even left the parking lot. You are the only one who is still carrying it. You are the only one who has turned one bad moment into a life sentence. But that's what fear does. It takes a small event, a match, really, and turns it into a forest fire. And the worst part? The more you avoid speaking, the worse your speaking gets. Because speaking is a skill, like playing the piano or riding a bike. You don't get better by avoiding it. You get better by doing it badly, over and over, until one day, it's not so bad anymore. But I didn't know that then. I thought I was protecting myself. I was actually starving myself, starving my mouth of the practice it needed, starving my brain of the evidence that most people are kind, starving my heart of the connections that come from imperfect, stumbling, real conversation. I was safe, and I was dying, slowly, quietly, one silent grocery store trip at a time. If this story sounds familiar to you, if you have ever made one mistake and then decided that speaking English is too dangerous, then you need to hear what happened next, because the person who finally broke me out of that cage was not a teacher, not a therapist, not a motivational speaker. It was my husband, and he didn't do it by being nice. He did it by being accidentally, brutally honest in a way that almost destroyed me and then saved me. That story is coming in section 4. But before we get there, I want you to do something. I want you to think about your own first humiliation. The moment that made you want to hide. The moment that convinced you that your voice was not welcome. And I want you to ask yourself, was that moment really as big as you remember? Or did you make it big by carrying it with you for years? Because the truth is, you are not that moment. You are not that mistake. You are not the laughter of a stranger in a classroom. You are the one who is still here, still watching, still trying. And that means you have already survived worse than a mispronounced word. Now let's talk about what happens when the person closest to you accidentally says the one thing that breaks you open. The frozen mouth, why your brain betrays you when you need words most. Have you ever had this experience? You're in a conversation. Someone asks you a simple question. Something you know the answer to. Something you could say in your native language without thinking. But the moment you open your mouth, nothing comes out. It's like your throat has been sealed shut. The words are right there in your brain. You can see them, you can feel them, but they won't cross the invisible bridge from your mind to your lips. So you stand there, frozen, like a computer that has crashed. The other person is waiting. The silence grows longer. And then, to escape, you say something completely wrong or nothing at all. That feeling has a name. Psychologists call it foreign language anxiety. But I call it the frozen mouth. And for years, it was my constant companion. Let me explain what's actually happening inside your brain when this occurs. Because once you understand the mechanism, you stop feeling broken and start feeling normal. Your brain has two main language centers. Broca's area handles the production of speech, actually forming words and sentences. Wernicke's area handles comprehension, understanding what you hear. When you're relaxed and confident, these two areas communicate smoothly. But when you're scared, when you feel judged, embarrassed, or pressured, your amygdala takes over. That's the ancient part of your brain designed to protect you from predators. Here's the problem. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a hungry lion and a judgmental coworker. It treats both as life-threatening dangers, and when it activates, it literally shuts down your Broca's area. That's right. Fear doesn't just make you nervous. It physically prevents your brain from producing speech. You are not stupid. You are not bad at languages. You are having a normal, predictable, biological response to perceived danger. The moment I learned this, I wanted to punch a wall. Not out of anger, out of relief. Because all those years I had been telling myself, you're not trying hard enough. You're lazy. You're not smart enough to learn English. But the truth was, I was trying too hard. I was so terrified of making mistakes that my own brain was locking me in a cage, and no amount of vocabulary flashcards could fix that. Let me give you a concrete example. One afternoon, about 2 years into my silent phase, I was at a bank. I needed to open a new account. I had rehearsed the conversation in my head 50 times. Hello, I would like to open a checking account. Yes, I have my ID. No, I don't need a credit card. Perfect sentences, perfect pronunciation. In my head. Then I walked up to the teller. She smiled and said, "Good afternoon. How can I help you today?" And my brain went completely blank. Not a single word, not hello, not account, nothing. My mouth was frozen. My heart was pounding. The teller kept smiling, but her smile started to look confused. Finally, after what felt like 10 minutes, but was probably 5 seconds, I pointed at my ID and squeaked this. "Please." She looked at my ID, then at my red face, and somehow understood. She opened the account. But I walked out of that bank feeling like a failure. I didn't go back to that branch for 3 years. Here's what I wish someone had told me back then. The frozen mouth is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that your brain is working exactly as evolution designed it. You see, your brain prioritizes survival over everything else. And in your brain's ancient logic, being socially rejected by your tribe was a death sentence. If your tribe kicked you out, you would die alone in the wilderness. So your brain developed a powerful alarm system. Social embarrassment feels like physical pain because, thousands of years ago, it was just as dangerous. But here's the problem. You are not in a tribe. You are not going to be left to die because you mispronounce speech. Your brain is using outdated software. It is reacting to a 2026 problem with a 50,000-year-old solution. And once you understand that, you can start to hack the system. The first hack is simple. Name the feeling. When your mouth freezes, don't fight it. Don't panic. Just silently say to yourself, "My amygdala is activated. This is not an emergency. No one is going to eat me. This sounds silly, but neuroscience says it works." Naming the emotion reduces its power because it shifts activity from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain. The second hack is even simpler. Breathe. Not a tiny, secret breath, a big, obvious belly breath. Exhale slowly. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which tells your amygdala to stand down. The third hack is my favorite. Make a mistake on purpose. Yes, you heard me. Before your brain can freeze you, deliberately say something wrong. Say, "I want to go to the beach," before you can say beach. Laugh at yourself. Show your brain that mistakes are not fatal. Because the only way to convince your ancient lizard brain that English conversations are safe is to have positive, low-stakes experiences. You cannot think your way out of fear. You have to act your way out. I didn't know any of this back in my frozen mouth years. I just knew that every conversation felt like walking into a battlefield. But then my husband, the man I loved, the man who had seen me at my worst, accidentally said something that changed everything. It wasn't kind. It wasn't gentle. It was the kind of honest, that cuts through all your defenses and leaves you raw. And that raw place, it turns out, was exactly where I needed to start. That story is coming in section 5. But before we move on, I want you to notice something. Did your mouth feel tighter while reading this? Did you feel a little bit of that old fear rising? That's okay. That's just your amygdala trying to protect you. Whisper to it. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but I've got this now, because you do. You really do. My husband's mistake. The words that almost broke me and then set me free. You know that scene in movies where the hero hits absolute rock bottom? The moment just before everything changes. This is that scene. My husband, Mark, is a good man, a kind man. He's the kind of American who holds doors open for strangers and cries at dog commercials. But he also has a habit of saying exactly what he thinks, without filtering it through the soft cushion of politeness. Usually, I loved that about him, until one night, he didn't. It was a Friday. I had just come home from another long day at the grocery store cashier job that I hated. My feet hurt. My soul hurt. I had spent 8 hours saying thank you, come again like a robot, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation, avoiding any risk of another humiliation. Mark was sitting on the couch watching something on his phone. He looked up and said, "Hey, how was your day?" Normal question. Normal husband. I wanted to say fine. That was my default answer. But something inside me, something tired and desperate, decided to be honest for once. It was hard. I said, a customer asked me a question and I couldn't understand. I just stood there. She got angry. I wanted to disappear. I expected sympathy, a hug. Maybe you'll get better. That's not what I got. Mark put down his phone. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not pity, something closer to exhaustion. And then he said the words that I would replay in my head for the next 5 years. Anna, you've been here for 3 years, 3 years, and you still can't answer a simple question at a grocery store. At some point, you have to stop being a victim and start actually trying. The room went cold. Not metaphorically. I mean, I felt the temperature drop. My eyes filled with tears. I didn't say anything. I just walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the floor in the dark. I didn't cry. I was too numb for tears. I just sat there, repeating his words in my head. Stop being a victim. Start actually trying. Was he right? Had I been hiding behind my fear instead of fighting through it? Yes. That was the worst part. He was right. But knowing he was right didn't make it hurt less. Because I had been trying. In my own way, I had been trying to survive. Trying not to embarrass myself. Trying to protect what was left of my dignity. And he made it sound like I was lazy. Like I enjoyed being the quiet immigrant who couldn't speak. That night, I didn't come out of the bedroom. I heard him knock softly. I heard him say, "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were puffy. My face was pale, and I made a decision, not a dramatic one, just a small, quiet promise to myself. I said out loud, in English, to my reflection, "He is not wrong, but he is not the whole truth." I am not a victim. I am a person who has been hurt. And hurt people heal. But only if they stop hiding. That was the first honest sentence I had spoken in years. Not to anyone else. To myself. Here's what I realized in that cold, early morning light. Mark's words were cruel. But they were also a gift. Because they destroyed the last excuse I had been hiding behind. For 3 years, I had told myself, people are mean. They don't understand. It's not my fault. And that story kept me safe. It also kept me stuck. Mark's brutal honesty ripped that story away. And without it, I had a choice. I could stay angry at him forever, which would feel good, but change nothing. Or I could use his words as fuel. I chose fuel. That week, I did something I had never done before. I went back to the community center where Mrs. Kowalski taught. Not to her class. I wasn't ready for that. But they had a small conversation group in the basement. Just a few students sitting in a circle, practicing simple sentences. No grades, no pressure, just people who were as scared as I was. The first day, I didn't speak. I just listened. The second day, I said one sentence. My name is Anna. My voice shook. My accent was thick. But I said it, and no one laughed. No one even looked at me strangely. The third day, I said two sentences. By the end of the month, I was having 5-minute conversations about the weather, about food, about nothing important. But those nothing conversations were everything. Because with each sentence, my frozen mouth was thawing. With each mistake, my amygdala was learning. This is not a lion. This is just a person, and people, even when they judge you, cannot eat you. Mark noticed the change. He didn't apologize again. That wasn't his way. But one night, he came home from work and found me sitting at the kitchen table, reading a children's book out loud to myself. Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. The words were simple, the rhymes were silly, but I was reading them aloud with expression. He stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching. Then he said quietly, "I'm proud of you." I didn't look up, but I smiled, and I kept reading. That was the beginning of my real recovery. Not because Mark's words were kind, because they were true. And sometimes, the truth you need to hear is not the truth you want to hear. The people who love you will sometimes hurt you, not because they're cruel, but because they're tired of watching you settle for less than you deserve. Mark was tired of watching me hide, and his frustration, expressed so badly, became the earthquake that finally cracked open my safe little prison. Now, you might be thinking, that's harsh. I would never talk to my partner that way, and that's fair. But here's the question I want you to sit with. What is the truth you have been avoiding? What is the honest sentence that someone or some part of yourself has been trying to whisper to you? The truth that your English is not as bad as you think. The truth that you avoid conversations not because you can't speak, but because you're afraid. The truth that you have been hiding behind your fear for years, and that hiding has become a comfortable prison. That truth might hurt, but it might also set you free. Mark's words hurt me more than almost anything else in my marriage, but they also saved me, because they forced me to stop being a victim and start being a participant in my own life. And that is the difference between staying stuck and finally moving forward. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the silent years, the long, gray period between that conversation and the moment I finally found my voice. It wasn't a straight line. It wasn't pretty. But it was real. And it led me to the letter that changed everything. The silent years, how I slowly starved my own voice to death. You might think that after Mark's brutal honesty and my decision to join that conversation group in the basement of the community center, I started speaking English fluently within a few months, that I found my voice, got promoted, made American friends, and lived happily ever after. That is not what happened. What happened was slower, messier, more discouraging than you can imagine. Because here's the truth about healing a frozen mouth. It does not happen in a straight line. It happens in stops and starts, in 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, in moments of courage followed by weeks of hiding. And for me, those silent years, that's what I call them now, lasted nearly a decade. Not 10 years of total silence, but 10 years of inconsistent, fragile, easily shattered attempts to speak. Let me give you a picture. After that first month of conversation group, I was feeling brave. I started saying hello to my neighbors. I started ordering coffee by actually speaking instead of pointing. I even had a short conversation with the mailman about the weather. His name was Dave. He said, "Crazy rain we're having, huh?" And I said, "Yes. Very crazy." That was it. 2 sentences. But I went home that day feeling like I had climbed a mountain. Then, a week later, I tried to return a pair of pants at a department store. The cashier asked me, "Do you have the receipt?" I knew those words. I had studied them, but my mouth froze. I stood there, holding the pants, my face turning red. The cashier asked again, slower. Still nothing. A line formed behind me. Someone sighed loudly. Finally, I just put the pants on the counter and walked out. I didn't return them. I didn't go back to that store for 2 years. That night, I didn't go to the conversation group. I didn't speak English for 3 weeks. Not to Dave the mailman. Not to my neighbors. Not even to Mark unless absolutely had to. I had convinced myself that the conversation group was a fluke. That the mailman conversation was luck. That my real self, the frozen, silent, ashamed self, was the only true version of me. This is the pattern that kept me trapped for so long. One small success would give me hope. Then one small failure would crush that hope into dust. And because I didn't understand the neuroscience of fear, because I didn't know that my amygdala was running the show, I thought each failure proved that I was fundamentally incapable. I thought my English was the problem, but my English was fine. My fear was the problem, and my fear was feeding on itself. Every time I avoided a conversation, I was training my brain to be more afraid. Avoidance is reinforcement. When you run away from something scary, your brain learns, good, we survived. That thing must be really dangerous. Let's be even more scared next time. So each time I walked out of a store instead of speaking, I was making the next conversation harder. Each time I nodded and smiled instead of admitting I didn't understand, I was digging the hole deeper. By the end of those silent years, I had trained myself to be terrified of something as simple as saying "excuse me" to a stranger. That is the power of avoidance. It turns small fears into monsters. And I was the one feeding the monster. Here's what I wish I had known back then. The antidote to avoidance is not massive courage. It's tiny, ridiculous, almost laughably small actions. You don't have to give a speech at a conference. You just have to say good morning to one person, not perfectly, not confidently. Just say it. And then do it again the next day, and the next. Because your brain learns from repetition, it doesn't learn from intensity. One small, imperfect good morning every day for a month will do more to rewire your fear than one heroic, perfectly pronounced conversation that leaves you exhausted and never repeated. But I didn't know that, so I kept doing the opposite. I would hide for weeks, then explode with effort, trying to have long conversations, trying to sound perfect, trying to prove something to myself and everyone else. And when I inevitably made a mistake, I would collapse back into silence. That was my pattern. Hide, explode. Fail, hide again, repeat for years. You might be doing the same thing right now. You study for hours. You memorize vocabulary. You feel ready. Then you try to speak to a real person, and the words don't come out right. And you feel like a failure. So you go back to studying. More flashcards, more apps, more passive listening. But the problem is not your knowledge. The problem is that you are not practicing speaking in low stakes, low pressure, tiny doses. You are waiting until you feel ready. And you will never feel ready, because readiness is not a feeling. It's a decision. I finally learned this lesson not from a teacher or a book, but from my daughter. Lily was 4 years old at the time. She was born in America. Her English was perfect, no accent, no fear. One day, she asked me to read her a bedtime story. I said, "Mama's English is not good for stories." She looked at me with those big, confused eyes and said, "But Mama, I don't care if it's good. I just want to hear you." That night, I read her Goodnight Moon in my broken, accented, stumbling English. I mispronounced moon 3 times. I said goodnight bears instead of goodnight chairs. Lily didn't correct me. She didn't laugh. She just snuggled closer and fell asleep. And I realized something. My fear was not protecting me from humiliation. It was robbing me of moments with the people I loved. My daughter didn't need a perfect English speaker. She needed her mother. And her mother needed to speak. That was the beginning of the end of my silent years. Not a dramatic breakthrough, a bedtime story. A 4-year-old who didn't care about accents. And a woman who finally understood that perfection is not the price of admission to human connection. You don't need to earn the right to speak by being flawless. You already have the right. You were born with it. Every mistake, every mispronunciation, every awkward pause, those are not evidence that you don't belong. They are evidence that you are trying. And trying is the most beautiful thing a human can do. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the night I finally wrote the letter to my younger self. The letter that made me cry. The letter that changed everything. But before we get there, I want you to do something. I want you to think about one tiny, ridiculous, almost laughably small action you can take today. Say hi to a stranger. Read one sentence out loud. Leave a one-word comment on this video. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be spoken. Because your voice, even frozen, even shaky, even wrong, is worth hearing. A whisper to myself, the letter that made me cry at 2 a.m. It was 2 in the morning. The house was quiet. Mark was asleep. Lily was dreaming in her little bed, probably about unicorns or ice cream. And I was sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where I had hidden my face in my hands so many times, with a blank piece of paper in front of me and a pen that suddenly felt very heavy. I don't know what made me do it that night. Maybe it was the bedtime story I had read to Lily earlier, the one where the bunny says goodnight to everything in the room. Maybe it was the memory of Mark's words, still echoing somewhere deep in my chest. Maybe it was just exhaustion, the kind of tired that comes from carrying a secret for 15 years. The secret was this. I still thought about my younger self every single day. The girl with one suitcase. The girl who said I live here now at the immigration counter. The girl who said bitch instead of beach and never spoke again. She was still inside me, curled up in a dark corner, waiting for someone to tell her it was okay. That she was okay. And I realized, at 2 in the morning, that the only person who could tell her that was me. Not Mark. Not a teacher. Not a therapist. Me. So I started writing. Dear Anna, I wrote. Then I stopped. Because I didn't know what to say. Dear Anna, that sounded like a letter from a bank. Too formal, too cold. I crossed it out. Then I wrote. Hey you, that felt better. More like a friend. More like the voice I wish someone had used with me all those years ago. Hey you, I wrote. Remember that night at JFK when you couldn't answer the immigration officer? Remember how your heart was pounding so hard you thought you might pass out? I want you to know something. You did not fail. You succeeded. You got through. And that stammered, broken I live here now was the bravest sentence you have ever spoken. The tears started then. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet, steady tears that dripped onto the paper and made the ink run. I kept writing. You are going to make so many mistakes. Thousands, tens of thousands. You are going to say bitch instead of beach in front of a whole class. You are going to freeze at a bank counter. You are going to nod and smile when someone tells you their mother died. You are going to hate yourself for all of it. But here is the thing you cannot see from where you are standing right now. Every single one of those mistakes is going to teach you something. Not about English, about courage, about humility. About the fact that you are stronger than your fear. I paused. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. I thought about the younger me, curled up on that sleeping bag in her empty apartment, convinced she would never belong. I wanted to reach through time and hug her, since I couldn't. I wrote more. You are going to meet people who laugh at you. They are small people with small hearts. Ignore them. You are also going to meet people who see your struggle and admire you for it. Those are your people. Hold onto them, and one day, you are going to have a daughter. She is going to ask you to read her a bedtime story in English. And you are going to say yes. And you are going to mispronounce moon 3 times. And she is not going to care. Because she loves you. Not your accent, not your grammar, you. That's when I really started crying. The kind of crying where you can't see the page anymore. Where your nose runs and your chin trembles. I had to stop writing for a few minutes and just breathe. When my eyes cleared, I finished the letter. So here is my whisper to you, younger me. You are not broken. You are not stupid. You are not a victim. You are a person learning to speak a new language in a new country, and that is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting to be perfect. Just speak. One word, one sentence, one terrible, beautiful, imperfect sentence at a time. Because every time you speak, you are not failing. You are building a bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. And the person on the other side of that bridge, the 42-year-old woman sitting at a kitchen table at 2 a.m., crying over a letter she is writing to herself, she is so proud of you. She is so grateful that you never gave up. She is living proof that the whisper works. So keep going, keep stumbling, keep freezing, keep thawing, keep speaking. I love you. I always have. I always will. I signed it, future you. Then I folded the paper and put it in an envelope. I didn't mail it anywhere. There was no address. The envelope sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. Every time I walked past it, I felt something strange, not shame, not sadness. Something closer to relief, like I had finally told the truth after 15 years of lying. On the 4th day, I opened the envelope and read the letter again, and again, and again. Each time, I cried a little less. Each time, I believed it a little more. Finally, I took the letter and taped it to the inside of my closet door. Not hidden, not secret, just there. A reminder, a whisper, a promise. That letter changed me, not because it was well written. It wasn't. My handwriting was messy. My grammar was shaky. I used the word so about 50 times, but it was mine. It was honest. And it was the first time I had spoken to myself with kindness instead of cruelty. For 15 years, I had been whispering terrible things to myself. You're not good enough. You sound stupid. Everyone is judging you. That night, I replaced those whispers with a new one. You are building a bridge. Keep going. And that new whisper, that tiny, quiet, persistent voice, became the foundation of everything that came after. The promotion at work, the friendships with neighbors, the conversations with Lily's teachers, the book club I joined even though I was terrified. All of it started with a letter I wrote to myself at 2 a.m. If you are watching this and you have never written a letter to your younger self, I want you to consider it. Not because it's magical, because it's honest. And honesty with yourself is the first step out of fear. You don't have to write a masterpiece. You don't have to use perfect English. Just write. Write the words you needed to hear when you were starting out. Write the truth that your fear has been hiding from you. Write the whisper that will carry you through the next frozen moment. In the next section, I'm going to share the 3 things I learned from writing that letter, the 3 things I wish I had known from day 1. They are simple, they are not in any textbook, and they will change the way you think about learning English forever. What I wish I knew: 3 secrets no textbook ever taught me. After I wrote that letter to my younger self, something strange happened. I stopped being embarrassed about my English. Not all at once, not perfectly, But the shame that had lived in my chest for 15 years, that heavy, cold, suffocating shame, started to loosen its grip. And as it loosened, I started to notice things I had been too scared to see before. Simple truths about language learning that no textbook, no teacher, no app had ever told me. Truths that, if I had known them on day one, would have saved me years of silence. Today, I want to share 3 of those truths with you. Not because I'm an expert, because I'm a survivor, and survivors see things that experts sometimes miss. Truth number 1. Your accent is not a mistake. It is a map. Let me explain. Every time you open your mouth and your native language peeks through, in the way you pronounce a vowel, in the rhythm of your sentences, in the tiny grammatical detours you take, you are revealing something beautiful. You are revealing where you came from. You are revealing the sounds your mouth learned to love before you ever heard a word of English. For years, I tried to erase my accent. I practiced for hours, repeating sounds like a parrot, trying to sound like the people on TV. And you know what happened? I sounded like a parrot. Fake, strained, uncomfortable. Because my accent is not a flaw in my English. It is the fingerprint of my first language. And the moment I stopped trying to erase it and started accepting it, something magical happened. People started telling me they liked my voice. They said it sounded warm, interesting, different in a good way. One coworker told me, when you speak, I have to listen more carefully. And that makes me remember what you say. Do you understand the power of that? My accent, the thing I had been trying to hide, was actually making people pay more attention to me, not less, more. So here's truth number 1. Stop trying to sound like a native speaker. You are not a native speaker. You are something rarer. You are someone who learned a second language as an adult. That is a superpower. And your accent is the cape. Wear it proudly. Truth number 2. Mistakes are not failures. They are data. This one took me an embarrassingly long time to understand. Every time I made a mistake in English, I treated it like a wound. Something to hide. Something to be ashamed of. But here is what I eventually realized. A mistake is just information. It tells you where the edge of your ability is. And the only way to expand your ability is to keep bumping into that edge. Think about a baby learning to walk. She falls. A lot. Does she lie on the floor and think, I'm terrible at walking? I should just crawl forever? No, she falls. She gets up, she falls again. And each fall teaches her something about balance, about gravity, about where to put her feet. By the time she is 5 years old, she is running and jumping and climbing trees. She doesn't remember any of the falls. The falls were not failures. They were data. That is how you need to see your English mistakes. When you say, I go to store yesterday instead of I went to the store yesterday, you are not failing. You are learning that English has a past tense that is not always regular. That is data. When you freeze at a checkout counter, you are not failing. You are learning that your amygdala is still a little too active in that situation. That is data. Use the data. Don't hide from it. The most successful language learners are not the ones who make the fewest mistakes. They are the ones who make the most mistakes and keep going anyway. Because they know that every mistake is a stepping stone. And the only real failure is the mistake you don't make because you were too scared to try. Truth number 3. Fluency is not about speed. It is about connection. This one will sound strange, but stay with me. For years, I thought fluency meant speaking fast. I thought it meant having no pauses, no ms, no moments of searching for a word. I thought it meant sounding exactly like a person who was born in Ohio and never left. But then I started paying attention to how native speakers actually talk. And I noticed something surprising. They pause, they stumble, they say and like 100 times a day. They forget words. They correct themselves. They restart sentences. Real conversation is not a smooth, perfectly pronounced river. It is a bumpy, messy, stop and start road, and the goal is not to eliminate the bumps. The goal is to keep driving anyway. One day, I was at a party. A native English speaker was telling a story. He paused in the middle, couldn't find the word he wanted, and said, "What's the word? The thing? You know, the round thing with numbers." Someone said clock. He said, "Yes, clock, thank you." And everyone laughed. With him, not at him. Nobody thought he was bad at English. He was a native speaker. They just thought he was human. That was the moment I realized fluency is not about having all the words instantly. It is about staying in the conversation long enough to find them. It is about being willing to say, "I don't know the word," or "Can you help me?" or "What do you call that thing?" It is about connection, not perfection. A fast speaker with perfect pronunciation who never listens and never engages is not fluent. They are just a fast speaker. A slow speaker with a thick accent who laughs at their own mistakes, asks questions, and genuinely tries to understand the other person, that person is fluent. Because fluency is not about you. It is about the space between you and the other person, and that space does not require speed, it requires courage. So here is my challenge to you. Stop measuring yourself against an imaginary standard of perfect English. That standard does not exist. Even native speakers fail it every day. Instead, measure yourself by something real. Did you speak today? Did you try? Did you stay in the conversation even when it was hard? Did you make a mistake and keep going? That is fluency. That is success. That is everything. I wish I had known these 3 truths 15 years ago. I would have saved myself so much pain, so much silence, so much loneliness. But I didn't. And that is why I am telling you now. Because you don't have to wait 15 years. You can start today. Your accent is a map. Your mistakes are data. Your fluency is about connection, not speed. Write those 3 truths on a sticky note. Put them on your mirror. Whisper them to yourself when the fear creeps in, and then speak. 1 word, 1 sentence. 1 terrible, beautiful, imperfect sentence at a time. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the question my daughter asked me that changed everything. The one that made me realize I had been lying to myself for years. And the answer that finally set me free. The science of fear, how your brain learns to be scared, and how to unlearn it. Let me tell you something that still makes me angry when I think about it. For 15 years, I believed my fear of speaking English was a personality flaw. I thought I was just a coward, a weak person. Someone who didn't have the guts to do what millions of other immigrants did every day. But then I started reading neuroscience, and I discovered that my fear was not a personality flaw. It was a biological program, a program that had been installed in my brain without my permission, reinforced by thousands of small, painful moments, and then left to run on autopilot. The good news: programs can be rewritten. Let me explain how fear works in your brain, because once you understand the mechanism, you stop hating yourself and start hacking the system. Deep in your brain, behind your eyes and roughly between your ears, there is a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons called the amygdala. Your amygdala is not smart. It is not logical. It does not care about your goals, your dreams, or your desire to sound like a native speaker. Your amygdala has one job: keep you alive. It is constantly scanning your environment for threats. And when it detects a threat, a real one, like a car speeding toward you, or a false one, like a coworker raising an eyebrow at your accent, it triggers something called the fight or flight response. Your heart races, your breathing quickens, your palms sweat, and crucially, the part of your brain that produces speech, Broca's area, gets partially shut down. That is why your mouth freezes. That is why the words disappear. Your brain is not betraying you. It is protecting you from what it thinks is a life-threatening danger. The problem, of course, is that a conversation in English is not a life-threatening danger, but your amygdala does not know that. It learned that English conversations are dangerous because of your past experiences. Every time you made a mistake and felt humiliated, your amygdala recorded that event as proof that speaking English is unsafe. Every time you avoided a conversation, your amygdala learned, good, we survived, avoidance works, let's do that again. This is called fear conditioning, and it is the same mechanism that makes a dog afraid of the vacuum cleaner or a child afraid of the dark. It is not rational. It is just association. Now, here is the beautiful part. Your brain is also capable of fear extinction. That is the process of unlearning those associations. And the way you do it is not by avoiding the thing you fear. It is by exposing yourself to it in small, safe, manageable doses and showing your amygdala that nothing bad happens. This is called exposure therapy. It is the gold standard treatment for phobias. And it works just as well for the fear of speaking English as it does for the fear of spiders. Here is how I finally applied this to my own frozen mouth. I stopped trying to have perfect conversations. I stopped putting myself in high-stakes situations where a mistake would feel catastrophic. Instead, I started having tiny, ridiculous, low-stakes conversations. I would go to the grocery store and say thank you to the cashier. Not hello. How are you? I would like to buy these items. Here is my payment. Have a nice day. Just thank you. One word. Low stakes. If I said it wrong, the cashier wouldn't even notice. I did this every day for a week. Then I added a second word. Thank you. Have a good day. Another week. Then I added eye contact. Another week. Then I asked a question. Do you know where the milk is? A question I already knew the answer to. Low stakes. By the end of 2 months, I was having short, simple conversations with strangers without my heart pounding out of my chest. Not because my English had improved dramatically, because my amygdala had learned, oh, these conversations are not dangerous. I can stand down. You see, your brain does not learn from intensity. It learns from repetition. One small, safe conversation every day for 60 days will do more to rewire your fear than one heroic, perfectly executed conversation that leaves you exhausted. But most people do the opposite. They hide for weeks, then try to have a real conversation with a native speaker. They put themselves in a high-stakes situation. They make a mistake. They feel terrible. And then they hide again. That is not exposure therapy. That is re-traumatization. And it is exactly what I did for years. Let me give you a concrete protocol. If you are terrified of speaking English, do not start by calling customer service. Do not start by asking for directions in a busy train station. Start smaller. Start in your own home. Read one sentence out loud to your cat. Your cat does not judge your accent. Then read one sentence to your mirror. Then record yourself saying one sentence on your phone and listen back, not to criticize, just to get used to the sound of your own voice. Then say hello to a neighbor. Just hello, nothing more than hello. How are you? Then hello. How are you? Nice weather. Each step is tiny. Each step is safe. Each step teaches your amygdala that speaking English does not equal death. This is not about being brave. This is about being strategic. You do not need to slay the dragon in one battle. You just need to show up at the edge of the forest every day and take one small step inside. Eventually, the dragon becomes a house cat. And you become someone who speaks without thinking about it. There is one more piece of science that saved me. It is called neuroplasticity. Your brain is not a fixed machine. It is a living organ that changes with experience. Every time you speak English, even badly, even fearfully, even with a frozen mouth, you are building new neural pathways. Those pathways are like trails in a forest. The first time you walk a trail, it is hard. The branches poke you. The ground is uneven. But the 100th time you walk that trail, it is a smooth, wide path. Your brain works the same way. The more you speak, the easier speaking becomes. Not because you are getting better in the traditional sense. Because your brain is physically rewiring itself to make speaking automatic. That is why the silent years were so damaging. Every day I stayed silent, the trail to my speaking voice grew over with weeds. Every day I avoided a conversation, I was making the next conversation harder. But the reverse is also true. Every time you speak, you are clearing the trail. Every mistake, every stumble, every awkward pause, those are not setbacks. They are the sound of your machete cutting through the jungle. So here is my challenge to you. Stop waiting to feel ready. You will never feel ready. Fear is not a sign that you are unprepared. Fear is a sign that your amygdala is doing its job. Feel the fear and speak anyway, not perfectly, not confidently, just speak. One word, one sentence, one terrible, beautiful, imperfect sentence at a time. Because the science is clear, the only way out of fear is through it. And the path is built one small, shaky step at a time. In the next section, I will tell you about the question my daughter asked me that made me realize I had been lying to myself for years. And the answer that finally set me free. My daughter's question, the 4 words that exposed my biggest lie. It was a Sunday morning, pancakes, maple syrup, the smell of coffee. Lily was 7 years old, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, drawing something with crayons. Mark was reading the newspaper on his phone. A normal, boring, beautiful American Sunday. And then Lily looked up from her drawing and asked me a question that stopped my heart. "Mom," she said, "why do you talk so slow? Not mean, not mocking, just curious. The way children ask why the sky is blue or why dogs have tails." I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out. Because I didn't have a good answer. I had been telling myself a story for years. The story was, I speak slowly because my English is not good enough. When my English gets better, I will speak faster. That story made sense. It was logical. It was also a lie, a complete, absolute, self-deceptive lie. And my 7-year-old daughter had just accidentally exposed it. Because here is the truth I had been hiding from. My English was fine. I had been in the country for over a decade. I could read novels. I could write emails. I could understand almost everything. But I still spoke slowly, not because I couldn't speak faster, because I was terrified of making mistakes. And my terror had become a habit, a deep, unconscious, physical habit. Every time I opened my mouth, my brain would automatically slow everything down. It would scan every word for danger. It would rehearse each sentence before releasing it. It was like driving with one foot on the brake at all times. My slowness was not a skill deficit. It was a safety strategy, and I had been using that strategy for so long that I had forgotten it was a choice. That morning, I looked at Lily's innocent face, and I wanted to say something honest, something true. So I took a breath and I said, "Because I'm scared, baby. I'm scared of making mistakes. So I talk slow to make sure I don't mess up." Lily thought about that for a second. Then she said, "But Mom, I make mistakes all the time, and I still talk fast." And then she went back to her drawing, just like that, as if she had just explained that water is wet. In that moment, I realized something that should have been obvious. Children make mistakes constantly. They say goat instead of went. They say foots instead of feet. They mispronounce words. They invent new grammar. And they do not care. They do not slow down. They do not rehearse. They just keep talking because they have not yet learned to be ashamed. Shame is not born in us. Shame is taught. Someone, somewhere, at some point, made you feel bad for making a mistake. And you learned that mistakes are dangerous. So you started slowing down, editing, hiding. But here is the question Lily's for words forced me to answer. What if you stopped being ashamed? What if you made mistakes at full speed? What if you talked as fast as you wanted, with your thick accent and your wrong verb tenses, and your ms and uhs, and just let people hear you? What is the worst that could happen? Someone might laugh, someone might correct you, someone might misunderstand, and then what? You would survive, just like you have survived every single time before. I thought about all the conversations I had avoided, all the friendships I had not made, all the opportunities I had let pass, not because I couldn't speak, because I was too scared to speak at normal speed. I had traded connection for safety, and the safety was an illusion because the silence had not protected me, it had imprisoned me. That Sunday, after Lily went back to her drawing, I made a decision. I decided to stop driving with one foot on the brake. I decided to talk at whatever speed came out of my mouth, mistakes and all, stumbles and all, even if it felt like jumping off a cliff. The first test came that afternoon. Mark's brother, Uncle Joe, came over for dinner. Joe was a loud, fast-talking man from Boston who said paktika and told long stories without pausing for breath. Normally, I would hide in the kitchen when Joe visited. I would say hello and then disappear, nodding and smiling from a safe distance. But this time, I didn't hide. I sat down on the couch next to him, and I talked, not perfectly, not slowly. I talked at my natural speed, which was still slower than his, but faster than my usual frozen pace. I said a lot. I used the wrong preposition twice. I said I feel boring instead of I feel bored. Joe didn't correct me. He didn't laugh. He just listened. And when I finished my story, a silly story about Lily's school play, he said, "You know, you're funny. I never knew you were funny." That night, I cried in the bathroom, not from shame, from relief, because for the first time in 15 years, someone had seen me. Not the slow, careful, edited version of me. The real me. The one who made mistakes at full speed. The one who was funny without trying to be. The one who had been hiding behind her own fear. Lily's question had cracked me open, and what came out was not perfect, but it was alive. Here is what I want you to take from this: your slowness, your pauses, your careful editing. Those are not signs that your English is bad. They are signs that you are afraid, and fear is not a life sentence. Fear is a habit, and habits can be broken, not by waiting until you feel ready, but by doing the thing you are afraid of at the speed of your fear, and discovering that the world does not end. You will make mistakes. You will sound imperfect. You will occasionally say something embarrassing, and then you will survive, and then you will do it again, and again. And one day, without noticing, you will stop slowing down. You will stop rehearsing. You will just speak, like a child, like a human, like someone who has decided that connection is more important than perfection. That day came for me, not dramatically, slowly, one conversation at a time, one mistake at a time. One I feel boring instead of I feel bored at a time. And now, when I speak English, I still have an accent. I still make mistakes. But I no longer slow down. I no longer hide. I speak at the speed of my thoughts, and people listen, not because my English is perfect, because I am real, and real is rare. In the next section, I will finally share the letter I wrote to my younger self, the one I promised at the beginning of this video, the one that made me cry, the one that I hope will make you cry too. But first, I want you to ask yourself the question Lily asked me. Why do you talk slow? Or why don't you talk at all? Is it because your English is not good enough? Or is it because you are scared? And if it is fear, what would happen if you spoke at full speed anyway? Just once? Just to see? You might surprise yourself. You might even make someone laugh. And that laughter might be the sound of your cage door swinging open. The letter I finally sent. What I whispered to my scared self. You remember the letter I wrote at 2 a.m.? The one I taped inside my closet door. For months, it just hung there. I would see it every morning when I picked out my clothes. Sometimes I would read a sentence or two. Sometimes I would pretend it didn't exist. But I never sent it, because you can't send a letter to the past. Or so I thought. Then, one afternoon, I was cleaning out my closet, the kind of deep cleaning you do when you're avoiding something important, and I found an old notebook. The notebook I had brought with me from my home country. The one with the broken spine and the handwritten English phrases. Where is the bathroom? How much does this cost? I am sorry. I do not understand. I hadn't looked at that notebook in years. I opened it, and there, on the last page, in my young, hopeful handwriting, was a note I had written to myself. Not a letter, just a sentence. It said, "Dear future me, I hope you are not scared anymore." That was it. No punctuation at the end. Just a sentence from a girl who had no idea what was coming. I sat on the floor of my closet, surrounded by shoes and coat hangers, holding that notebook, and I cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears. Something in between. The tears of someone who has finally closed a loop she didn't even know was open. Because that sentence, "I hope you are not scared anymore," was a question. And the letter I had written at 2 a.m. was the answer. I had been waiting to send it to the past, but the past had already sent a message to me. And now it was time to reply. So I took the letter from my closet door, I folded it carefully, and I put it inside the notebook, right next to that hopeful sentence. Then I closed the notebook and put it back on the shelf. That was the moment I finally let go. Not of my fear entirely, fear never fully leaves, but of the shame about my fear. I stopped wishing I had been braver. I stopped hating the girl who said bitch instead of beach. I stopped resenting the woman who hid in the bathroom during office parties. They did the best they could with what they had, and what they had was not a personality flaw. It was a brain trying to protect them. A brain that didn't yet know that English conversations are not lions. But here's what I want you to understand. That letter was not just for me. It was for you too. Every word I wrote to my younger self applies to you. Because you are carrying the same fear, the same shame, the same frozen mouth. And you have been waiting for someone to tell you it's okay. So let me be that someone. Let me read you parts of the letter. Not the whole thing. Some things are too private, but the parts that matter most. Here's what I wrote to my younger self, and what I am writing to you now. You are not broken. You are not stupid. You are not a victim. You are a person learning to speak a new language in a new country, and that is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting to be perfect. Just speak. One word, one sentence, one terrible, beautiful, imperfect sentence at a time. I want you to read that again, slowly, out loud. Let the words land, because they are true. They were true for me 15 years ago, and they are true for you right now. Your English does not need to be perfect to be worthy. Your accent does not need to disappear to be beautiful. Your mistakes do not need to be erased to be valuable. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a person to be heard. And the only person who can give you permission to be heard is you, not your teacher, not your boss, not the native speaker who might or might not laugh at you. So here is your homework. Not flashcards, not grammar drills, not another app. Write a letter to your younger self, the one who first started learning English, the one who was excited and scared and hopeful. Tell that person the truth. Tell them that they will make thousands of mistakes. Tell them that some people will laugh. Tell them that they will freeze at bank counters and mispronounce simple words and want to disappear. And then tell them that they will survive, that they will keep going, that one day they will speak at full speed with their thick accent and their wrong prepositions, and someone will say, "You know, you're funny. I never knew you were funny." Tell them that the fear never fully goes away, but it becomes a companion instead of a cage. Tell them that their voice, that shaky, accented, imperfect voice, is not a problem to be solved. It is a gift to be given. Then fold the letter, put it somewhere safe, and let the past finally rest. I did that, and something shifted inside me, not dramatically, not overnight, but slowly, like ice melting in spring. I started speaking more, not perfectly, not without fear, but more. I started raising my hand in meetings. I started calling customer service instead of using the website. I started telling stories at dinner parties. And every time I spoke, I felt the girl in the notebook, the one who wrote, "I hope you are not scared anymore," not in approval. She's still with me. She lives in my chest. And when I feel the old fear rising, I whisper to her, "I'm not scared anymore, not completely, but enough." And she whispers back, "That's all I ever wanted." So here we are. At the end of this long story, you have listened to me stumble through my past. You have watched me cry over a letter. You have learned about the amygdala and exposure therapy and the power of a 7-year-old's question. Now it is your turn not to be perfect. To begin, one word, one sentence, one terrible, beautiful, imperfect sentence at a time. Write the letter, say the sentence, speak at full speed, make the mistake, survive, and then do it again, because that is how every single fluent speaker got fluent. Not by avoiding fear, by walking through it, one shaky step at a time. In the final section, section 12, I am going to give you the last whisper, the one I saved for the end, the one that will carry you out of this video and into your own imperfect, courageous, beautiful voice. Don't go anywhere. The best is coming. Your whisper today, the one sentence that will change everything. You have been on a long journey with me. From the airplane at JFK to the frozen mouth at the bank. From Mark's brutal words to Lily's innocent question. From the letter I wrote at 2 a.m. to the notebook I found in my closet. We have walked through 15 years of fear, shame, silence, and slow, painful thawing. And now we are here, at the edge of something new. Not the end of the story, because the story never ends, but the beginning of yours. Because this video was never really about me. It was about you. The you who is watching right now, in the dark, on your phone or your laptop, feeling that familiar ache in your chest. The you who has been trying to learn English for months or years and still feels stuck. The you who has a beautiful, intelligent, worthy voice inside you, a voice that you are terrified to let out. I know you because I was you. And I am here to tell you the only thing standing between you and the English speaker you want to become is not vocabulary, not grammar, not pronunciation. It is one sentence, one whisper, the one you have been refusing to say to yourself. Here it is. I am allowed to be imperfect. Say it out loud, right now, wherever you are. If you are in public, whisper it. If you are alone, shout it, say, I am allowed to be imperfect. How did that feel? Uncomfortable? Strange? A little bit like a lie? That is because you have been trained to believe the opposite. You have been trained to believe that mistakes are failures, that accents are flaws, that slow speech is a sign of stupidity. That is the training. That is not the truth. The truth is that every single person who has ever learned a second language, including every native English speaker who learned Spanish or French or Mandarin, every single one of them went through exactly what you are going through. They froze. They fumbled. They said embarrassing things. They wanted to disappear. And then they kept going. Not because they were special. Because they decided that connection was more important than perfection. That is the decision you have to make. Not once, every day. Every conversation, every time you open your mouth, you have to decide, I am allowed to be imperfect, and then you have to speak. Not perfectly, not confidently, just speak. Let me tell you a secret about confidence. You think confidence comes before action, that you need to feel confident in order to speak. That is backwards. Action comes before confidence. You speak. You make mistakes. You survive. And then, slowly, without noticing, you feel a little less scared. You speak again. You survive again. And one day, someone calls you confident. And you will be confused because you don't feel confident. You just feel like someone who kept showing up. That is all confidence is, showing up. Imperfectly, repeatedly, until the showing up becomes a habit, and the fear becomes a whisper instead of a scream. So here is your final challenge. Before you close this video, before you scroll away to the next distraction, I want you to do one thing. I want you to leave a comment, one sentence, in English. It can be anything. I am learning. I am scared. I made a mistake today. Thank you for this video. I am allowed to be imperfect. Just one sentence. It does not have to be correct. It does not have to be spelled right. It just has to be yours. Because that comment, that small, imperfect, courageous sentence is the first step out of silence, the first step toward your voice, the first step across the bridge that your future self is begging you to build. I will read every comment, not to judge, to witness, to say, I see you, you are trying. That is enough. Because that is what I needed 15 years ago. Someone to see me. Someone to tell me that trying was enough. I did not have that person, so I became that person for myself, and now for you. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to speak slowly, with an accent, with wrong words, with frozen moments. You are allowed to try and fail and try again. That is not weakness. That is courage. That is the courage of every person who has ever learned to do something hard. And learning English is hard. Not because English is difficult, though it is hard because you have to be vulnerable. You have to risk being seen as less than you are. You have to risk embarrassment, judgment, laughter. And you have to do it over and over for years without giving up. That is not a language problem. That is a heart problem. And your heart is strong enough. I know because you are still here. You watched a 90-minute video about a stranger's struggle with English. That means something inside you is still hoping, still reaching, still believing that you can change. That hope is not naive. That hope is the engine of every transformation. Feed it, speak one sentence, leave one comment, take one step, and then another and another. That is how the girl with one suitcase became the woman speaking to you today. Not in a straight line, not without falling, but she kept going. And so will you. So here is my final whisper to you, not to your younger self, to you right now, in this moment. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too old, too slow, too scared. You are exactly where you need to be. And the only mistake you can make is to stay silent. So speak. One word, one sentence, one terrible, beautiful, imperfect sentence at a time. I will be here, listening, and your future self is already proud of you. You just watched a woman spend 15 years afraid of her own voice until she wrote a letter to her younger self and finally whispered, "I am allowed to be imperfect." That whisper didn't fix her English overnight, but it cracked open a cage she had built with her own fear. And now she speaks, not perfectly, not without mistakes, but freely. Here's the part I didn't tell you in this video. The letter I wrote. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I never expected. In my next video, I'm going to read you the actual letter, word for word, and show you the one sentence that took me from frozen to fluent. You won't believe where I found it. So here's your call to action. Subscribe now, because the real story is just getting started. Comment one word. Whisper if you're ready to stop hiding. Like this video if you believe your imperfect voice is worth hearing. This channel is not about perfect grammar. It's about real people, real fear, and real courage. One slow English sentence at a time. Your future self is already proud of you. See you in the next video.